Welcome everybody to Rock Talk with the DocRocker. I'm Jeff Bonomo, joined once again with the DocRocker himself, Danton Orlando, and we have another special guest in our Zoomiverse. MetalRules.com. It's a website that's been online since 1995. It's based in Newfoundland, Canada. The site was founded with the goal to promote real metal. It's one of the world's largest, longest running heavy metal websites, and we're talking today with the owner and creator of Metal Rules, Evil G. Welcome to Rock Talk.
Hey, how's it going? The creator.
Thank you very much.
The Dark Master himself has arrived to grace us with his presence.
Thank you very much for doing this with us. I've been a fan of Metal Rules, and I've been an avid reader of Metal Rules since, I don't even know when. Not since, probably around 95. I probably found you guys right after you started, right after it started up. And I've been reading ever since. So the site now has like an international staff, additional contributors from around the world. There's over 8,000 reviews, 1,000 interviews. There's a ton of stuff still on this website, which still exists today, which is, that's a feat in itself, since, we watched the internet grow together, basically, from in the beginning of Metal Rules to where the internet is now. And so let's go all the way back to the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about you. Where does your love of metal come from? Like, what was young Evil G into growing up? And
Well, young Evil G didn't have the internet, of course, because back then there was no internet. There wasn't even sensible radio where I grew up that played metal. So some of the things I discovered later than others, because I also live in a remote part of the world. So a lot of cool bands didn't tour here. So young Evil G had like your typical magazines like Hit Parader, Faces, Circus, guitar magazines, guitar player magazines. So what was popular at that time in the early 80s that I discovered was, of course, bands like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, AC/DC, and the beginnings of glam, which I still like early Dokken, early Rat, early Motley Crue, all those kinds of bands.
I can get behind that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where it all started, really, in the 80s for me with that kind of stuff.
The same here, because I live in Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania, and it's not as remote. I think you're in St. John's.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, I remember that. I can't believe I remember that. There's a reason why I remember that, actually, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But I grew up in coal country, town called Partysville, which no one knows about. It's a tiny little town, and whatever we got from radio, and it was a lot harder to find music. Especially the music that I was gravitating to, even back in the 80s. I was gravitating to Megadeth and Metallica and Priest and Maiden, but I was also force-fed a lot of the glam stuff, which I like a lot of the stuff too. Like you said, the earlier glam stuff, there was still a lot of great songwriting in that. And of course, we all know where it went, but
it went down the shitter, but it started out pretty much, as a spin-off of metal that was a little poppier, but still not terrible. So
I agree. So now we're going to go into 1995.
Right.
The idea comes up. How does the idea come up of MetalRules.com? Like, where did it come from, and how did you implement it?
Well, I was attending university at the time, and universities, the internet itself existed at the university since whatever, the 60s, I guess. I don't know when the internet was formed exactly. I'd have to look it up. Anyway, so I remember I was in like some computer lab, and someone said, hey, there's such a thing as these news groups. And this was before there was even a web. And I remember typing in like whatever it was to access news groups and seeing like alt.metal.this, whatever. And I was like, wow, there's people all around the world talking about bands that I know that no one I know in my real life knows. So that's kind of how it, little spark went off. And this was probably around 93, 94, 92, somewhere around that vicinity. But then there was the web. And the very first web browser, and some web browsers were even text-based first before there was an actual graphical browser. That's going way back, of course. But I remember the first thing I did, it's like, because I'm obsessed with metal. The first thing I did is there was a search engine. It's pre-Google, so it was probably, I don't know, Lycos or Alta
Yeah,
Vista.
probably. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was one of the first like crawlers that you could type in. And the first thing I did, of course, is I typed in heavy metal, power metals, thrash metals, whatever, all this stuff and band names. And I was finding very, very, very little. And a few bands were starting to go, aha, we should put something online. So there's a very small amount of metal sites. And of course, I was bookmarking them if bookmarking functionality even existed at the time, or writing them down. So I ended up saying, well, maybe I should make a page because I'd like to visit all these sites all the time. So I made a page, just a single page of links. And it was links to like all the bands who had sites at the time. And there was no other magazines online at the time. So I was kind of like, hey, this is interesting. Like, so I just threw the site on the internet. It wasn't even Metal Rules at the time. It was just like my university account, and I had a page there. And I started getting emails pretty quickly from other people like myself. And then I got an email from, I believe it was the guitar player from Sacred Reich,
All right.
Wiley, and he sent me an email and he's like, hey, you like a lot, just, and I was like blown away because, like, of course, I love Sacred Reich.
Right, you get a little starstruck when you talk to someone that you idolized for so many years, and all of a sudden he's popping you an email. That's an incredible feeling.
So he was, and that's when another spark went off and said, shit, I could like write this guy some questions and he could answer them, and I could like post it up there for people to see.
Yeah.
And that was the very first thing I did, I believe, was I probably did an interview through email with him, and that interview was still online, of course, because we don't delete our old stuff, we just archive it and it sits there. So that's kind of where it all started, and it kind of just blossomed organically out of that, from me hosting this on a university server page, which it shouldn't have been on, of course, at the time, but nothing was policed back then. And I learned how to do HTML and all that kind of stuff, and and it grew from 95, I guess around 97, 98 is when I bought an actual .com address. And so yeah, that it kind of, as you know what happened after that, it kind of blew up and got really big. Yeah.
So how hard was it to get going though? Like you just said, you had to learn HTML. Was that like a difficult thing for you to do?
No, I didn't really find it that difficult. I'm not a web programmer. Like I can dabble, but the HTML and the design stuff is, I'm not a wizard at it by any stretch, but I found I could figure out the basics pretty easily, and I've been doing it now for so long that it's kind of second nature. It's what I do in my job, my daily job too. I'm editing web stuff all the time, so I never get away from it these days.
Yeah, so that might as well do it for a passion project, something that you really enjoy a lot.
Yeah, I didn't really consider it like learning or work. It was kind of like, man, I got to get this stuff up there. Like there's all these bands that I could cover, and start writing reviews of stuff, and it was like me all by myself for the first little while, until I can't remember who the first other writer was besides me, but it was probably one of my friends, and said, hey, I'll review some stuff. And then shortly thereafter, you start getting contacted by bands, PR people, record labels wanting you to cover their stuff. And of course, then it got out of control, where like, this is like, because now everything's digital, but back then in the mid to late 90s, even early 2000s, nothing was digital. It was all like, my mailbox would be chock full of envelopes. I have like, I have a drawer here in my music room. There was no cassettes. There might have been 2 or 3, but it was CDs. And it was like, you get your black and white glossy 8x10 promo picture, printed bio. It was all really cool. And I still have like all my stuff that, well, unless the band was terrible, but I kept all my stuff from all the back then, like all the record labels that were sending me stuff back then, Noise Records, Spitfire Records, Kosh Records, Nuclear Blast, Century Media, Metal Blade. Like they all sent stuff, and I used to have to put it into piles of like by genre, and then I had to like start sending stuff around the world to different writers, saying, well, this person likes more traditional metal, here's a pile of stuff for them to cover. And because it got out of control, I was like getting 50 to 100 albums a month, and it was just like,
oh my God. Yeah, time to delegate.
I don't have time to listen to all this, and I still don't. I never will. Like, unless
that's the beauty.
Unless it's your job, right? I mean, if you had 9 to 5 every day to listen to albums and critique them, then there's time to listen to 50 albums a month easily. But I don't know how in depth you'd get with them, but there's time. But when you work in another job and you have other interests in music and life, you can't listen to everything. But I did hear a lot of music back then, especially.
I can imagine.
It seems like, and I could be wrong, but I mean, back then, the record companies, and you were talking to even print media, they were slow to get on board to the internet, to the digital medium that it is now. So when they did find Metal Rules, and they did find you were you just kind of like, you were inundated by everybody probably?
Yeah, I didn't really have to like ask people to send me stuff. I might have done that a little bit, but I don't recall very much of that happening. It was pretty much as soon as they got a hold of you and they saw the site and saw that you were legitimate and an actual metal fan and not, just there to get freebies and not write about them.
Well, you were one of the only outlets though, really, back then. Like you said, a lot of these magazines weren't online, but you were. And so I'm sure that it was just a flood of stuff at first.
And I'm sure there's a few guys from back then who hated people like me because I was doing it just because, these magazines weren't all available to buy at my local store somewhere. I have fond memories of another Canadian magazine, Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles. They used to be used to be a print magazine, and they're not any longer. They're just a news outlet mostly now. But back then they were a print magazine, and I had a subscription for years. And in the early 90s, mid 90s, you'd get that every month with a free sampler CD, and it was like a window to a world of music that I didn't know about because
probably a dozen bands.
These things were on the internet
that you never heard of.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Like a lot of 90s bands that, I don't know, I'm saying
like we're kind of underground.
Sentenced, Paradise Lost, like bands that were big in the 90s that, weren't on TV here or on the radio here. Like that's how I found out about a lot of these bands initially before they started sending me stuff.
Yeah, and well, especially in the 90s, we were inundated by another type of music. Grunge was the main thing that was shoved down our throats. So trying to find metal in the 90s, especially in the mid 90s, that was tough, pre-internet, and
for many reasons too. Yeah.
That brings me to the Metal Rules web board, which I absolutely loved going there because that helped me find so many bands. And I told Danton stories about this before on the podcast that I knew of the major power metal bands, for instance. I love power metal. I knew about them, but I didn't know all the other ones. I knew Halloween, I knew Stratovarius, but when I go onto this web board, which of course was, worldwide, I start hearing about all types of different bands and different genres of music. I didn't even know folk metal was a thing, and then I discovered Skyclad through metalrules.com. But the main band I discovered through them, and I still love them today, is hometown favorites of St. John's, of course, Chevy and Stoner Rock in general.
Chevy.
I love those.
Chevy are awesome. I was at their very first show when they weren't even called Chevy. They went under the name Green Machine because they played it was a Caius tune, as you know. And that was their very first show. And back then it wasn't a big scene here, but I used to go to the guy that played guitar in Chevy at the time, Dan. I know him, of course, small scene. He was in a band from here that is defunct now, but they were called After Forever, and don't confuse that with the Netherlands band After Forever that Floor used to sing in. So anyway, Dan, After Forever were like a thrashy Metallica melodic band, and then he joined and started Chevy, and Chevy were just amazing, right? And they're still on the go.
They're still around, and they're still making albums too. I think Steve's the only original member, but I still, every time they put an album out, I buy it. The one that just came out on it was just vinyl. I had to order it from Ren, Moons Over Penumbra, and I was like, "Why did you make it on cassette and album? Like, what the hell? Come on!" So I bought the LP off of them not too long ago, actually. Yeah, but Chevy was the band introduced me to the whole stoner rock thing because I was just like, I just thought it was like, bands that sound like Black Sabbath. I didn't know there was a name for it. And Chevy was probably the best example of bands that sound like Black Sabbath that aren't Black Sabbath, but they write great tunes too. A little story about them I remember, and I think we talked about this briefly, Danton, on another podcast, when file sharing was going on in Napster and stuff. There was a song that was placed on Napster. Unreleased Black Sabbath.
I remember
demo.
this.
Oh yeah, we did talk about this when we did our album review for Chevy. A couple weeks ago.
It was the Electric Sleep.
Yes.
Sleep.
Yeah.
So that that gave him a little notoriety, which was nice and stuff. But like I already knew of Chevy when I saw that. Of course, people I think were probably on the Metal Rules web board saying, "Oh, here's an unreleased Black Sabbath album." You guys are like, "Come on, no, the guy's down the street,"
Yeah.
Yeah, just throw a white blanket over all of that.
But that's how I found a lot of music. And I know in our emails, Evil G, we talked back and forth a little bit about how that made you feel. Like people still tell you about bands you discovered 30 years ago almost, or 20 years ago because of what you did.
Yeah, it's sometimes it makes you pretty proud. Sometimes it makes you feel old. It's a combination of things. Sometimes it's people who were, I was young at the time too, but I mean, they were even younger. There was people on there who were like, maybe 13, 14, and now they're, playing in bands, and they will write me and say, man, I really got into metal thanks to, being on that forum and reading your site, blah, blah, blah. And now they're playing in bands. Like, I know Andy from Lord, the Australian band. He used to be, was it the Aussie Wild Child or some, I don't know, I can't remember his exact name, but that was before he was even in Lord. He was all over the board all the time, and he's a great guy, and now he's in an amazing band, of course. And
they are amazing.
There's a number of people like that every now and then someone today, even, I can't remember the name of the band, one of the other writers for the site is corresponding with a guy from I think he said Serbia. I could be wrong. And anyway, the guitar player in the band said fond memories, like you said, of the discussion forum and getting into metal. And now he's in a band that's, releasing albums. And so it did make quite an impact on a lot of people, and hopefully still is to some degree, even though there's no forum anymore, because I shut the forums down eventually for probably to you, or maybe not to you, obvious reasons, but.
Right.
Yeah, well,
right.
I hate to make it feel old, but I am a good deal younger than both of you guys. I was born in the 90s, so I was like in elementary school when all of this was going on. So I had no idea. I didn't even really get into metal until many, many years later when I was in like college, like the 2010s, 2015. I was starting really, so I've been like really, really big about it since. So I've literally today, in preparation for this chat, I just went to your website for the first time. And immediately looking at the first impression, there's like a dozen bands here that I've never heard of. And that is super exciting. And even just like looking at the news page when you first click it, and there's like September 17th, like there's like 15 different posts just today, most of which involve bands I've never heard of. And it's like, oh my God, what a treasure trove of awesome exposure to art and music that I am totally going to eat up over the next couple of weeks. So
I think we've kept the mandate of like, there's other sites that came after us and have gotten way bigger than us, but they're also I don't want to say anything bad about them, but they're doing good things, but they're also very commercial. Like, how many times do you want to read about what Corey Taylor thinks about what Dave Mustaine said about whatever, or or what Dave Mustaine ate for breakfast, or or who said what about COVID today, or
all of a sudden it becomes a bit like a People's Magazine kind of thing, where like you're just highlighting all the stupid shit about celebrities. And that's something I'm noticing is, like a lot of the posts here on Metal Rules, it's all like real down to earth stuff. Like, here's the new artwork for the new Exodus. They created this new mascot and they're super excited about it. And here's a commemorative 10-inch black vinyl single for Hellraiser from Ozzy coming out in December. Like, it's all like real posts about real stuff that metalheads care about.
Important stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not the clickbait that gets 20,000 people who probably don't give a shit about metal to go read, or who has a passing interest in metal to go read. I think that
Right.
I would like to think that what we're posting and doing is for people that are hardcore into metal and don't care about the drama and the National Enquirer stories of the day kind of thing.
Right. So you definitely won't have as many clicks as some of those other sites, but you could guarantee that every single one of those clicks is by a real true blue metalhead that really is going to read all the content, engage with that content, and like you said, you've established this effective network where so many musicians can meet each other, and it just blows my mind to think of how many bands were formed because of stuff like this going on at the time and going forward.
Yeah,
it's
definitely
amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So,
Yeah.
Because one of the most memorable topics that always came up over and over and over again was someone would just post Priest versus Maiden. That would be the topic, and that would be it. And then it would go on for pages and pages.
And pages
for weeks,
yeah.
probably. I mean,
Yeah.
people are still having that conversation now.
Well, it's kind of like the
been 40
Megadeth
years.
or Metallica or Priest Maiden or
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever people compare today, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ozzy Sabbath, Dio Sabbath,
Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Big time.
but they were also great conversations too, most of the time. Like there would be a lot of conversation back then about Dio Sabbath versus Ozzy Sabbath versus whatever, Ray Gillen Sabbath or Ian Gillian Sabbath or Tony Martin Sabbath.
We don't talk about that.
You don't like the Born Again album by Sabbath?
I'm not a big fan. We did an album review on it a couple months back, and it's funny because I love Ian Gillan. He's one of my favorite singers. I'm a big, as a keyboard player. I mean, Deep Purple. Come on, I was all about them in high school, and there was a really cool 70s classic rock scene because I grew up in the same area where Jeff did. We're related. We're cousins. So we grew up in the greater Hazleton area, which was well known for that old school classic rock. And I had this really nice, diverse upbringing. It wasn't really metal when I was in high school, but I was getting into all the Kansas, all the progressive stuff, Journey and all that. And
it had real musicians, real guitar players on
super musicians,
some of the other
right, Steely Dan, stuff like that. So I was a big Deep Purple fan, and I found out when we started this whole thing about a year ago, we started doing album reviews every week, and Jeff will give me a bunch of stuff I never heard of because I haven't heard of soul much because A, I'm so much younger, and B, I live under a damn rock. So there's so much music I haven't heard. And he told me about this Born Again album, and it's wait, what? Ian Gillan is with Sabbath? Yeah. That sounds amazing. That could be incredible. And I was so pumped to hear this.
Oh, no.
And I listened to it, and it did not.
Well, I do like it, but it's not their finest moment, but it's not
No,
their worst moment either. Didn't like it at all. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Man, Zero the Hero is freaking awesome, man.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you like it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Oh. I don't like the mix. Mix is really terrible on that. You have to get past the mix.
Yeah, I think that was part of it for me because my ears are pretty sensitive. I really try to make sure I can really get a good grip of everything because I'm I'm a big theory geek, so I want to pick apart what's the bass line doing, what are the chords in the middle, and and if I can't hear all the stuff properly, I'm it's kind of crappy.
Okay.
Not a big fan, but that's all right. But that's just me, whatever.
Yeah. Like I said, there were some of the things that there would be discussions daily on this web board about stuff like that. And a lot of times it went very deep. And a lot of times people had, their opinions. So, some people had better opinions than others, I'll say that, about everything. Like I said, Priest, Maiden, Metallica, Megadeth. Now, there was a guy who went by the name Ultra Boris. I'll never forget this guy.
I'll never forget him either.
He seemed to know everything about metal, everything, man.
Actually, I got a couple things I can show you because when you were talking about the board, one of the names that always comes to my mind, because besides some of the negative people or negative trolls, one of the things that really came to mind is Ultra Boris. And today is the anniversary of Judas Priest's album, live album, Priest Unleashed in the East. He made, through various means, the ultimate Priest in the East album because there was the Japanese version, there's the US version. Then there was a couple singles that had live tracks that didn't make either of those cuts. So he pulled it all together and made the ultimate one, which was 72 minutes long,
Wow.
I don't know, 16 or 17 songs. And he made an actual copy of this. I don't know how well you can see that, but he made an actual copy. Nice. And it's, he made a real copy. he burned it off for me and stuck a label on it as just a CDR. But when I listen to this album now, this is the one I pull out, not the
That's
others.
the definitive. Yeah.
Because it's in the correct order. It has all the songs. It's from the same date. It's like perfect.
That's
and the other
really
thing
cool.
And the other thing I'll quickly show you is he sent me a record. Back in the 80s here in Canada, a big thing was the Power Hour, which was Much Music. Kind of like MTV, only Canada's version, I guess. I don't think you get Much Music in the States, but
none anymore. But we used to.
Well, they don't play music anymore anyway. But Much Music used to have a metal show called the Power Hour, and they used to play all kinds of cool stuff, like Venom, Voivod, Celtic Frost, like some really hard stuff. And then of course, as it evolved, they played like stuff like Your Crew and Skid Row and other bands that were a little more accessible. But I remember they played this song by a Russian band, and the band is called Cruise. And you can tell by their logo is Russian. Yeah. And they got the hammer and sickle on their T-shirt there. And I remember, and I had fond memories of this song. There's a song on here called In Flames. This is, of course, predates the band In Flames by a lot. The album came out in 1988. And anyway, it was played on the show. And I remember like posting about on the forum about this band Cruise and, how awesome this song In Flames was. And Ultra Boris, of course, he knew a lot about Eastern Europe metal more than I did, and he was like, and he hooked me up with a copy of this album.
Wow, that's awesome!
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And that's pretty rare. That's a pretty rare album, I'm assuming, right?
Well, I've never seen it in a store. It's never been in stores here, and I don't know. I got it on vinyl now. So.
Awesome.
But yeah, there's lots of cool things like that, right?
Yeah, did you get a lot of stuff like that from people, like over the years?
Not as much from just random people saying here's a CD. It was more like from bands and especially newer bands.
Right,
same
trying
thing,
to find
same
ways
thing
to promote
today.
their material, I'm sure.
Yeah, like we have a forum on our webpage now for bands because we get like I don't know 50 emails a day for requests for reviewing and covering and interviewing things. And it's just overwhelming, but the little guys don't have a PR person all the time. They're not on a label, or they're on such a small label that, one person runs the label and they can't really do much for the band. So we have a form there where an unsigned band can fill out the form with all their details, album name, paste in a link for, us to be able to access it, to download it. And we get, I would say in a week, we might get 10 or 20 bands that no one has ever heard of from who knows where in the world that are, sometimes really cool bands. And, we try to cover it all, but I mean, you can't cover everything.
Oh yeah, you can't. Yeah,
it's
you
impossible.
Can't cover it all.
That's the beauty of it.
But let me say this. You keep on getting bands sending you stuff all the time. So rock and metal, not dead at all.
No. It's actually, I think there's more bands now than there was in the 80s and 90s.
Sure.
But
sure.
exponentially, like I was gonna say, by a 1,000-fold. There's just less bigger bands because there's so many that everything is spread out,
saturated. Right? Yeah.
Which is okay.
Or diluted, I guess you could say. It's not as saturated.
It doesn't mean the music isn't as good. It just means that there isn't as many people listening to 10 bands. There's more people probably listening to 100 bands, that kind of thing. So I'm okay with that. It's a little, sometimes you can look back at the heyday and go, oh man, it's too bad that, some of these bands aren't on the radio, but
or some of them aren't bigger than they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we do, even on the podcast here, we tend to talk about bands like that are pretty much out of the mainstream. Well, we will talk about our mainstream bands that we like, of course, like Maiden and Priest and Megadeth and stuff. But
I wear a Maiden shirt almost every week when we do these episodes. I'm a huge fan. So
last week we sat down and we did a Zoom interview about an hour long with Robert Lowe of Solitude Aeternus, Candlemass, Grief Collector. What others? He's doing Tyrant now.
Yeah, that interview was incredible. He was awesome.
It was a great interview. But
he was so much fun.
Out of the metal circle, no one knows who he is.
Really?
Yeah. And that's really a crying shame because he's so freaking talented.
And there's
But
a
that's always
thousand
been a
guys
thing
like
with
him.
metal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even like, and like it's funny because like as a Maiden fan, there's of course a bajillion Iron Maiden fan clubs you could join on social media now. So I'm a part of a whole bunch of them. And there were so many fans who were like, oh, it sucks that like they're not like on the charts and their stuff's not #1. Their music is a masterpiece. They're geniuses. It's like, yeah, it's never been the point is to top the charts.
No.
It's never been to get
No.
that, as you said, that whole like commercialism aspect of it has never been the forefront of a metalhead's focus. It's always been like, let's just make genuine, down to earth art and share it with people we love. And and if there's a cool platform like Metal Rules where like our music can reach ears all over the world, then those people that really dig it are gonna dig it up and pursue it and find it and go to it and gravitate toward it. And those that don't, that are into the more poppy kind of stuff, will just kind of go their own way, and that's fine too. But whatever,
But like you said, the listeners are also saturated too, because they might go to Metal Rules and see like 50 bands posted in the past month that all are potentially something that they might like, but how much time do they have to listen to all of them and give them a fair shake? Like it's hard for a band to rise above, even if they're amazing. It's still hard because
absolutely. You're right.
what is it about a band that grabs someone's attention? It's not always the musicianship. There's lots of bands that are huge that have really shitty players in the band, or mediocre players. There's lots of bands that have amazing players that are good too, of course, but and there's bands that bunch of guys that are I don't know, don't look cool or don't look metal or don't look the part, and people are going to be like, just look at a picture and blow them off, or there's so many reasons for why people will check something out or give it a fair chance, and it's hard to know what it is that makes people want to check it out.
Well, that's the problem with art. It's so subjective. And it's going to be a different answer for every individual person on the planet.
And for the mood they're in at that time that they decide to look to, probably.
Right.
That's true too. Yeah, I mean, you got to be in the right mood for black metal, and I got to be in the right mood for power metal. So it is subjective. But I do try to.
You don't have to be in the right mood ever to listen to Judas Priest.
Okay, well,
I'll
say that about Maiden. I'll say that about Maiden.
Or Iron Maiden. But there's certain bands that you don't need to be in a mood for. They're just, you put it on anytime and instantly your mood is improved and you're like, yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of metal. I've always said that. Like, even the darkest like metal that there is, you're in a bad mood, you throw that on. For me, at least, I'm feeling a little bit happier, and that goes all the way back to when I was like 8 years old. I turned on, Black Sabbath, Master of Reality, and I was like, I feel better now. That's the beauty of metal. It really always made me feel better whenever I was like had a little problem or something. It's always turned to metal. That's really, even now, I mean, like, you guys are talking about, playing guitar and playing in bands and stuff like that. I play in a cover band. I play in a dance band. I don't play metal anymore unless I'm home. Unless I'm here.
Yeah, I find sometimes though, like you said, it makes you happier. But sometimes if you listen to a band that's happy, like say, Stradivarius, Sonata Arctica, Freedom Call, like they're really happy bands. Sometimes they can make you feel happy, or sometimes if you're not happy, they can make you really angry and you want to hear something.
They can just annoy you. Yeah, they can just kind of piss you off. Like, I want something a little darker. Don't give me something so optimistic.
Yeah,
I'm having a shitty day.
Yeah. The power metal stuff, like, it's I want to go drink with my friends music, and swing the
tankards. Yeah.
I don't have a beer. I'm drinking a gin tonight, so
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
I'm sipping rum. I'm ready for pirate metal. So.
Oh, there you go. A little hailstorm, huh? The hailstorm tonight, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of things that we started to gravitate to on this podcast, was bands like Hailstorm that like are way out there, and that's why I started thinking back about the Metal Rules stuff, because you guys always covered bands that I won't mention other names, like you said, other websites are covering like the more mainstream metal. You always gravitate to the more band, the more underground stuff, the more real metal stuff, actually. And even back when, when the web board was up, like there was always a band that I would see like on the first page. I'd be reading through. I don't know what that band is, and I'd look them up, and next thing you know, I'm out when CD stores still existed. I was out buying the album,
Yeah. Or if we got
You know,
lucky enough
thank
and
you
they
for
came to Northeast PA, go see him in a concert. Yeah.
Oh my God, never. They never did that. you
Well,
know?
sure. Yeah, we always have to drive Philly,
Well, they probably
Allentown.
came within driving
As
distance. At least you could
Yeah.
drive somewhere to see it. I can't even drive anywhere to see anybody.
yeah, yeah, we're only about 2 hours from
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. You're
I
not even
actually
close.
live. Yeah, I'm closer now because I kind of moved to the greater Philadelphia area, so I'm only about maybe 40 minutes away from the city. But yeah,
And there's
but
yeah, and
anyway,
Philly always there's always a good stop in Philly with some of these bands, and I usually miss them because I'm gigging or something.
yeah.
Like every time Nightwish came by, every time Nightwish came through, I missed them. So you know, so
Oh,
there
that
you go.
sucks.
Too
See,
bad.
I got really lucky that back when, like, about 2 years ago, when I first started getting into black metal, because of a friend, and he was like really big on like the underground scene, and there was a couple of really great shows that we went to, like at these like little like shit hole in the wall bars in Philly, and it's like, all right, yeah, you guys just come down to my place, and then we'll take a half-hour trip over, and we could go see the show, and it was awesome, and that was all right before the pandemic, and we went to like
Yeah.
3 or 4 shows in a season, and it was incredible, and I'm very much looking forward to when that can happen again, because that was fun.
Yeah, we all are. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I'm not alone in saying
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I haven't seen a concert since late 2019.
Same.
Yeah,
I think that goes for all of us.
Yeah. Well,
'Cause-
there's been a little bit of stuff, but I mean, yeah.
But even now shows are getting canceled because, this COVID
Yep.
thing really hasn't stopped. We
I
have
know it sucks. Yeah.
Oh, it's awful. I hate it.
Yeah.
Are you guys still up north? Are you guys still locked down? No live shows or anything, or what's going on up there?
No, there are some, but there's no, well, Judas Priest and Sabaton are about to embark on they have embarked on their tour already in the States. And I believe there's a couple Canadian dates, and I'm kind of like, is this going to happen? Like, because, the situation is not, we're not out of it yet, right? So
yeah, no, we're
Yeah.
not.
It's been rough for all of us, and it's been probably really rough for, the bands that aren't Metallica, we'll say.
Especially the smaller bands. The underground
smaller
scene
bands, yeah.
is completely,
Yeah.
like I said before, just giant wet blanket over all of it. And there's really not a lot of
Right.
fire there to start because there's not a lot of people who know about them.
yeah, they
Yeah,
might have albums, but they're not making any money from album sales. They make their money on the road,
Right.
If they're lucky
Selling merch.
from selling
Yeah.
merch, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they're not on the road, what are
They're
they
not
doing,
making
right?
anything. They're sitting in their
Yeah.
apartment, paying their,
Yeah, you're
record
really-
labels for copyrights and losing
Yeah,
money.
you're echoing what Robert Lowe said last week. Was they recorded? I don't know. Evil G, I don't know if you heard the new Tyrant album that he's on called Hereafter. It came out last year, 2020.
Middle of
It's
the
one
summer.
of the best. One of the best albums I've heard in a long time, man. Anyway, he said
It's
they
cool.
did that album, and you can't do anything,
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah,
new
can't promote it, can't tour,
Yeah,
can't,
I mean,
can't,
can't do anything with it. So he's like,
Can't
I'm
do
just
anything.
sit home and drink Natty Light or Natty Ice. That's what he said.
yeah, he's a Natty Ice guy. We checked with him with his beverage of choice, which was very entertaining.
Evil G, what do you think now, comparing the state of heavy metal now to where it was when you started Metal Rules? But let's talk about the differences between then and now.
I guess the explosion of bands since the 90s of the various crazy number of subgenres, all of which can either really make you understand what they play or really make you frustrated about why are they calling themselves apple core peanut butter metal jam, it makes no sense to a lot of people, right? Because they have so many classifications now that I kind of stick with the main things, like it's kind of thrashy or it's kind of death metal, it's kind of power metal, but then it goes really into like crazy things like
you get people
gent and shoegaze and all this crap.
My favorite style is vegetarian progressive grindcore, and it's like, that's not a thing, dude. Come on. That's always my favorite joke.
But it
genre.
probably is actually a thing, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, who knows?
Right.
If there's vegetarian progressive grindcore out there and I just offended a whole boatload of people, I am sorry, but I think it's hilarious.
So what is Evil G listening to now? Like if you have to pick a band that you've been jamming to lately, what have you heard recently that's like great?
Well, we can start with something that everyone's going to know about and say I just got the new Iron Maiden last week, finally.
Ooh, okay. Let's talk about that for a minute. What'd you think of it?
What do you think?
I think it's better than I expected them to release at this point in their career. It's not their best album, but it's their best album to me since, say, probably Brave New World.
Wow. Okay.
It's if I had to say something negative about it, it would be that about 90% of the songs start with clean intros and bore me to tears for a minute or two before they get to something good. But I mean, yeah, you know, they're allowed to do what they want. They're Iron Maiden. So if they want to have a boring intro for 3 minutes, I'll listen to it until it gets into something I like. So it's not a boring album. It's just, you know, they're doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
Oh, it surely does. It's a little bit bloated, but I mean, I'm not going to criticize Iron Maiden because, you know, they are one of the best metal bands.
Yeah. You're definitely not alone in any of what you just said.
Yeah, I think me and you both said similar things, and we did a review last week about it that we didn't even upload it yet. I have to get to editing it someday.
Get your act together, Jeff.
Sorry, I've been busy. But I feel the same way. You know, it was like an 82-minute album that could have been a 64-minute album. We'll say they could have
or less
a little bit. I think it's probably their best thing, though. It was their best album, I think, since Matter of Life and Death, I think.
Yeah.
I still like Brave New World. That's my favorite out of the new Maiden when Bruce came back.
Here we're real big proponents of A Matter of Life and Death. I think that is a grossly underrated album. A lot of people don't like it.
It's okay.
Yeah, well,
I don't dislike it. There's no Maiden I dislike. I even kind of like some of the Blaze Bayley albums, not as much as the Bruce albums, but
you're not wrong. X Factor's terrific. You know, when you get past the singing, the music is fantastic.
He was the wrong singer for the band is all. He wasn't a bad singer.
I would agree 100%. Yeah, I've on more than one occasion I've gone on the record and just abused.
But his solo albums he's done since Maiden have been better than what he has done with Maiden. So
well, that's good. Good for him.
Silicon Messiah. Was that his first
that was
one?
One of his first ones. I can't remember all the titles, but that was I think one of his first ones he did after.
That was the one that sticks in my head. That was good. I remember that being really good. Surprisingly good. Because
there was one that you shared with me that you had me listen to. It was a Blaze Bayley solo thing. I forget what it wasn't that though, I don't think. It might have been something else.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember.
That one's the one I usually go to. Are you sure it wasn't Diano's stuff?
No, because Giano I really like. He has that Killers project from like the early 90s that he did, and that's incredible. I love it. That was one of my first listening assignments we did for our album reviews.
The second one he got a little rap rocky. There's like a lot of rap and nu metal in it.
Oh yeah, you shared me that too. Yeah, that one wasn't that great either.
No,
but
the first one I think was the first one is called Murder.
First one is awesome.
That was pretty good.
There's not a dull. There's not a dud on that whole record. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And I'll just throw out a couple other names for some newer bands that people probably don't know about that I've been spinning a lot. The newest album from Burning Witches is really cool. The newest album from Frozen Crown, power metal band, really cool musicianship in that. Excellent shredding, excellent band. A band that probably people wouldn't think I would listen to because they're more of a goth metal band. Lord of the Lost, their new album called Judas. Awesome. It's a double album. Really, really cool band. Really excellent singing. Of course, I do listen to a lot of black metal these days. So I'm still digging into bands like Immortal, Dark Throne, Satyricon, and I still love my power metal, of course. So that's why Burning Witches and Frozen Crown come to mind as newer bands that I've, gravitated towards.
Awesome.
And I always listen to the classics. I'll never stop listening to Maiden and Priest and, Slayer and all the bands, I kind of grew up with. So
are you into like any like kind of wacky stuff? Like kind of like really progressive things?
I don't really like prog. I like technical playing, but when it gets too progressive, I'll be amazed for about a song or two.
And then it kind of wears off quick.
Like the Dream Theater effect. Like I'm amazed for a song or two at how awesome they are. And then I kind of like fall asleep. It's too noodly, right?
Something that might be, I get the feeling, judging from your tastes and the bands you've mentioned, something that it might be a bit of a coin toss for you, but there was an underground black metal band I saw. I believe they go by the name of Imperial Triumphant.
It sounds like black metal.
Yeah, they're kind of new. They haven't been around for very long, but they were something from a whole different planet when I saw them live. And I picked up whatever their most recent album was at the time. This was about 2 years ago. And it was just like this weird, incredible experience. And it was really off the wall. And it was really, really cool. So it might be worth checking out if you want to check them out. I could potentially. Yeah. I'll have to look them up and double check and make sure that's the right name. But yeah, cool.
Yeah. I don't like too proggy kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not really proggy, but it has a lot of progressive elements in it. There's like a lot of mixed meter and like really long songs and things that just kind of, but it's a little more kind of just technically nuts. Yeah, it's a little crazy.
Like I even like bands that are symphonic black metal, kind of like your Dimmu Borgir and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
They're amazing. I like their old stuff too, but I mean, a lot of people crap on their last album for some reason, but someone said it was like Nightwish got a hold of them, and I was like, what's wrong with that? I love Nightwish.
Yeah, no, nothing wrong with that at all. Nightwish is
for
incredible.
People who are just 100% hardcore into the extreme, that there's like blasphemy to them. Like, oh my God, you have a choir. Or,
we can't have strings and choirs and keyboards and organs and all that fairy stuff. We can't have any of that. It's all gotta be guitars, detuned.
They gotta be grim all the time. Yeah.
It's better to branch out sometimes. The same thing was said about Maiden back when in Somewhere in Time came out in the 80s. They were like, what's this Iron Maiden with keyboard stuff? Well,
some of their best stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, listen to Empire of the Clouds off of Book of Souls with that whole like nice little piano intro. Not just because I'm a piano player, but that is some incredible stuff, man. I love Book of Souls.
There are still metalheads that will say, as soon as they know that there's a band that has keys in it, will say, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's wrong with keys, right? Like,
as a piano player, that breaks my heart, man. Because
well, like Jens Johansson from Stradivarius is like probably my favorite keyboard player because he plays lead keys. He doesn't just do atmospheric stuff. He like shreds his keyboard. Yeah. He's awesome, right? Like,
well, he is. He's amazing. He was he played with Yngwie too, I think, didn't he?
Exactly. That's probably where he got a lot of his influence from, maybe to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah, Danton, that's another power metal band you have to check out that I didn't give you yet with Stradivarius. They're really good.
We've definitely, when we did our power metal episode, we talked about them, and of course, they're on my queue. But every week that we do this, my queue just grows and grows and grows. I'm like, there's so many more cool bands I got to keep checking out.
Your favorite power metal band is Rhapsody, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know the keyboard player's name for that, but he's one of those like super like awesome lead shredders, and he has incredible solo work, especially when they were still Rhapsody before they became Rhapsody of Fire. I remember the song Holy Thunder Force. I don't know what album it's on, but that was like the song that got me into like power metal entirely. So it's like, oh my God, there's a keyboard guy in a metal band, and he's doing this crazy, ridiculous stuff. I can't even understand what he's doing. It's amazing. Oh my God,
Yeah.
And I was a fan ever since. I was like 13.
Way back in the day, I interviewed the keyboard player, and I interviewed Luca Trilli, the guitar player. But it was very difficult to understand because their accents were so Italian. It was like, oh my God.
I was gonna say, they're all Italian, I think. So.
Those crazy Italians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're virtuosos. I saw not Rhapsody. I saw Luca Trilli's Rhapsody, which. The singer now is no longer in Luca Trilli's Rhapsody because it's now Fabio and Luca together, and this guy got kind of pushed out, and he's in another power metal band, I believe it's called Trick or Treat or something. Anyway, I saw him live, and he was a fantastic singer, and I was kind of disappointed, even though I'm happy to see Fabio back with Luca. But I remember watching the show, and Luca Trilli has been. Like I've seen a lot of bands, and he's not my favorite guitar player, but he is the best live playing guy I've ever seen. Like I was like, his stack was right in my face, and I was just like
disgustingly clean.
He was just like sweep, and would look so clean and just like so fast,
flawless.
And just like, right,
the kind of player that makes you hate yourself. It's like, my God, how can I
pick up your guitar and you move it over, you lay it down, you go, we don't play the same instrument at
all. No, I'm just gonna set mine on fire. Because that'll do it more service than trying to play it after hearing.
It's kind of like watching Steve Vai. It's like, what is that you're playing? Like,
my favorite guitar player of all time. I love him so much.
He is. When I think of people that are not from this planet at all, he comes to mind.
Yeah, he's definitely on the top 10. I would say.
He's mind blowing. Like I don't listen to him all the time, but every time
that guy plays with his friggin' teeth. He does more stuff with his teeth than I could do with both of my hands.
Was there a video like about a year ago? He had an arm in a brace and he just tapped out something.
Yeah, from one of his new it was an original tune he put out. I forget the name of it, but yeah, he had like an injury. And so he like just played the entire song just lefty, only using hammer-ons and slur technique.
I know.
And then he tried to strum at the end and like was like, ow, you know, and it's like, oh my god,
not,
you could
not
do more
human
with...
at all.
No, not at all. I don't believe he exists.
No.
He's not real.
He's not real. No.
I can't wrap my head around it, man.
No.
What do you think is in the future for metalrules.com? Where are you seeing it going, say, in another 10 years?
You know, if you asked me that 10 years ago, I would have said, you know, pretty much where I am now, just keep on trucking, right? Keep doing it. Like, I have no grand scheme plan of like where it needs to go. Like, I think it just needs to be there. It needs to continue to help out, you know, promote bands that are not, you know, Iron Maiden, even though we're going to review the new Iron Maiden this coming month, the big staff all review. Everyone's going to throw in.
I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. Yeah.
Because, you know, everyone likes certain bands, so why not cover them? It's not like we don't like Iron Maiden. You know, we love Iron Maiden, of course. Most
Right.
metalheads do, but I mean, the goal is to continue to help out, you know, interview bands as much as we can. And you know, when it all started, I was doing all this myself, and now I'm more of the administrator and the orchestrator and the overseer of all the world of metal
The
rules.
mastermind.
Like, I don't write reviews anymore because, not because I can't, it's just because, you know, who's going to do all the other things if I start writing reviews?
Right. You got to manage the team now. You know, you
manage, dole out the content, add news, you know, help people format their things. There's a million other things behind the scenes that people probably don't know I do, which I am doing all the time. Like, you know, back then when I was in university, I could spend, you know, 10, 20 hours a week working on metal rules because it was just me and I was young and I, you know, wasn't working.
And
I
it was a
going to
passion
school,
project.
and
it was a labor of love.
You know,
it was something cool. And
I
it was
had
a way to
time to
share
do
what
it.
you had. Yeah.
I don't have 20 hours a week to work on many metal rules anymore. And
You probably don't have 2 hours a week to do it anymore.
yeah, I would say I got to, you know, there's hours in a week, but I mean, it's probably 2, 3, 4, 5 tops.
If that.
Some weeks, if something comes up, I might be at it for maybe 1 hour, but you know, it varies, right? But it helps that
Right.
you got a team of other people that are contributors that are doing things too, and you know, you kind of show them the ropes so they can learn how to use the back end to add content. And
Sure.
how to format things and how, you know, what should be covered, what shouldn't be covered. There's always arguments about that, of course, but but you know, you try to keep it on track for keeping it true to as much as like the tagline is promoting real metal, because some of us at Metal Rules feel pretty strongly about things that shouldn't be covered, that, you know, some other staff members are really into, and sometimes we butt heads and say, you know, man, you can't be covering that. Like, you know, just because they're angry and aggressive don't mean they're heavy metal. And you know, sometimes it slips through and we do cover things that me personally, you know, think is disgusting.
Not particularly proud of. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, hey, you know, it takes all kinds, and
That's part of growth.
Yeah,
a little bit.
A little bit, but I mean, yeah, there's certain things that don't belong, period. Metal is metal, and it can have outside influences, but if you take in too much other things, then, you know, the metal is like 1/4 of your sound, and then why are we covering you, right?
Right. Like I'm sure you had that problem a lot more back in 1999 into the 2000s when we saw this huge like new metal movement. I even like to call it new metal. I think did you coin the phrase mallcore?
I popularized it, but I believe it was probably Ultra Boris that came up with it, and I still call it mallcore because it's calling it metal is just because they have some angry riffs and some down-tuned guitars doesn't make them heavy metal.
Right.
They were influenced by metal, but they were influenced by really shitty metal.
I'm gonna have to agree, and you know that was, you know, some of it like I've learned to actually kind of like a little bit more than I did back then, but not there's very few and far between.
Zero.
I'm like,
Zero.
zero. Not good for you. Okay,
That might just be because we're a different generation, but that's where we differ a lot. I'm big on a lot of the new metal stuff. That was one of the first episodes we did. We talked about like just how stylistically diverse that genre could be, and how much potential it had, and how it kind of got a bad rap unfairly. But yeah, I always have a soft spot for it. But that's because maybe that's just nostalgia for me, because that was one of my first forays into metal.
Yeah, I guess there are probably guys even older than me that if I say, Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil is one of the best heavy metal albums ever, they're going to be like wanting to punch me in the face. But I go, well, hey, I was like, 13 or 12 or whatever I was back then. And that really grabbed me, right? And it was heavy metal for me.
I agree.
Right? So
that's a great metal album. Absolutely great metal album.
But you're a similar age to me. That's why you agree. There's probably someone who's 25 who will say that is a terrible album. They suck. They can't play. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, they're all old. They're past their prime. Blah blah blah.
And
which isn't fair to say.
The Korn Fall of the Leader is the best metal album that came out in 1999. They're going to say something like that, and I'm going to say no.
No.
But that's fine. That's fine. I think I'd have to look at the episode we did again about new metal. But
that was about a year ago at this point.
Yeah, I didn't really say much good, other than I really wish that the guy from Disturbed would stop making monkey noises, and they could actually maybe become a real metal band if they started writing some decent riffs.
I can't name a single song by them. I know the name, but any of those bands, I can't even tell you a name of a single song by Korn. Like, I don't know their music. I just heard bits and pieces enough to just go, nope, not metal. Just like I can't tell you the names of a lot of like recent pop music. Why? Because not metal. Like, I'm not going to listen to it.
And if it's not what you listen to and it's not what you're into, then that's all right.
That's fine. But that was one of the things also I did want to touch on that, like, right around the time, new metal was happening, like in 98 to 2002, maybe, the Metal Rules web board was exploding with things that were like, okay, this is not metal, this is metal. And like, that was almost like a safe haven for a lot of metalheads like us, that we could just talk about real metal. We didn't have to worry about people coming in saying, "Oh, did you check out the new Limp Bizkit song or whatever?"
No, if someone posted that, we would delete it, or we would move it to the forum called like Not Metal or something.
All right, that is something we can agree on. Limp Bizkit is in no way, shape, or form metal, and he never will be.
No.
Yeah, and that was one of the ways we described it back then was mallcore. Because it was trendy, like going to the mall, and it had more in common with hardcore and stuff like that than it did actual metal. And I actually, the band I was in at the time, we wrote a song called Mallcore.
I bet you the lyrics were good.
The lyrics were just they're totally profane and disgusting. I'll have to post it someday again. I have to find
I feel like you might have after we did our new metal episode. I feel like
I may have. Yeah, I think I did. I did.
I think you did. And it was hysterical.
I just remembered somebody from the Metal Rules web board messaged me when I posted that, because I posted it on, I don't know, some file sharing site back then. Someone said, "Do I have the rights to play this on my radio show in Spain?" Like at like 2 a.m, he did a metal show, and because it was a parody of a mallcore song called Mallcore, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, play it, man. Why not?" So my project back in 2000 got some radio play in Spain for this disgusting mallcore song that we wrote.
That's funny.
That's
so did he have to twist your arm to do an episode about new metal, mallcore, or like?
What's that?
Did he have to twist your arm to do an episode about new metal, or like if someone asked me to take part in that, I would be like, "No, we're not talking about that."
No, come to think of it, I think it was Jeff's idea to talk about it for an episode.
I think it may have been my idea just to cover it for your sake, because I wanted to hear what you thought about it now compared to how I would think about it now, 20 years on, because to me, it didn't age, and we were bombarded by it, because that was like the mainstream media was like, this is metal, and so everywhere you went, you were bombarded by it.
Fred Durst, the face of heavy metal, like, and just like made so many like actual metalheads just cringe.
So, 20 years on, it was like, okay, I did go back and I looked at some of the major things we were talking about on that podcast, and I was like, I still don't really like it. You know, other than some stuff by Disturbed, I enjoy, but I still think like they could be a good metal.
For me, The Sickness is a masterpiece. That first album they did back in like 2001 or whatever the hell it was, that is just, I think it's one of the most powerful albums of all time. It was funny because I got exposed to it early on because I'm the youngest of three. I got two older brothers, the oldest of which was like a big like new metal guy. He was into like Mudvayne and Slipknot and all that stuff. And as a younger kid, I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. I would actually make fun of it with all my friends. I was like, oh, all this stuff sucks. And then as I got older, and like I said, I got into high school, and then I got into like all like the classic rock stuff, and then I got turned on to Maiden pretty early. And then it was like a couple years after that, I like revisited all like the kind of newer stuff that I got exposed to earlier on when I was in like college and like studying music. And I was like, I'm just going to go back to this like weird, total off the wall nonsense things. And I found beauty in it when I looked at it more objectively. I was like, oh, actually Dave Draymond's doing some really kind of, interesting, unique, progressive stuff that no other singer has done or can do. And that's really cool. And just something about it, it just kind of like hooked me early on. And I got super into The Sickness. And then their second album, which was the polar opposite of that, I got super into that too. And I was like, Disturbed is awesome. They're like one of my favorite bands.
I want to hear him like play with like a thrash metal band or something, or I want to hear him play with like a power metal band or something. Make use of his voice more. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be very, very interesting.
It could happen.
No, it never will. It's a miracle that Disturbed even got back together. And then they put out that awesome album, Immortalized, in like 2015 or 2016, and that was awesome. And then they did whatever their most recent one was. It was pretty much... They took like the Guns N' Roses route where like they went from like balls to the wall, like super like hardcore aggressive, like real cool, like middle fingers and like crazy heavy riffs. And then they went to this like campfire kind of stoner jam crap that like I don't know. I listened to the new album once and I hated it. And,
well, I want to thank Metal Rules for giving me a place to talk about metal back then when all this stuff was going on. Everywhere I turned, man, all that new metal stuff was the rage.
We policed that forum really well. And there were rules posted too. Like you can't, this is about metal. You can't post about. We're not going to cover mallcore. We're not here to talk about pop. There was a general forum, and the general place was like, if you really, really need to talk to somebody about whatever it is, go there and talk about it. The metal forum itself, the main guts of the forum was strictly heavy metal, and we would delete or lock topics that were not about whatever. It is nostalgic to look back at that era because it's never going to happen again because social media is the new beast. And the Metal Rules forum, I'll just mention briefly why it went away. It went away because a couple of reasons came together. There was social media, so people were more using your Twitters and Facebooks and all this other stuff. Yeah. There were other sites that pulled people away, and the big killer for the site was bots. Bots just started attacking the site and coming in and creating accounts. So I had to lock down account creation so that no new accounts could be made. And then you'd look and someone would say, hey, I made an account like 2 weeks ago. How come I can't get in? And I'm like, okay, you're a real person. Now I'll let you in. Mm-hmm. Right. And this was just like a huge pain in the ass.
Probably it got to the point where it's probably too much work and more trouble than it was worth. So might as well pull the plug.
Yeah. And so the plug was, let's say the power was on, but the lights were out or something. So there were still like some hardcore people that stuck around for like the very, very end days. And it became pretty much a ghost town. And then one day I just posted and I said, hey, I'm closing these forums down. They've served their purpose. There's not many sites really on the internet now that forums are huge on. There's still some, of course, but it's not like it was in the 90s and early 2000s. So it was kind of like a waste of my effort and time to try to police it and approve accounts and keep out the spam and the bots and people posting junk, and it was just a waste of time. So unfortunately it died.
But it did its job. Yeah, it did its job for a long time, and I thank you for it, because that was the main place I went to when I went to Metal Rules, like every day. You know, I'd read the headlines, maybe an album review if it was something I was interested in, and right before them I would go.
So I guess it's pretty surprising. We've been online since '95, and back then I don't remember any other sites doing what we did. And like I said, a lot of sites have come along. Some have come and went, and we're still here. And the plan is to stay at it, really, basically, and keep it true, and try to keep it about heavy metal and not about the flavor of the day. So bands like that play real metal are always going to have a place there, no matter what the flavor of the month is, whether it's some kind of core or mall core or metal core or death core or poppy core, I don't know, apple core, whatever comes along.
Baltimore.
But yeah, so that's pretty much the plan. Just keep on doing it, and hopefully we all stay alive long enough and healthy enough, and maybe one day I'll be retired and I'll still be grandpa metal. And
that is an awesome ambition. I love that. Well, it's
definitely. Then I can write
testament.
reviews again.
yeah, it's a testament to your work that the site has stayed this entire time, and it's stayed, not only that it's stayed period, but that it's stayed relevant. Like you said, with so many other sites that have come and gone that have tried to kind of replicate the same thing, to have something that's as old as 1995 still be here and still be posting content daily. Yeah. It's really incredible.
We never really chased after like the advertising dollar, like other sites have really, went after, like their sites are covered with ads from casinos and the labels all advertise their stuff on their site, and that's why they're covering the major things, because that's who's going to pay ad money. Yeah. But we will have a scattered ad, but it doesn't even cover the cost of hosting. Like the amount of money I spend to keep Metal Rules online comes into my own pocket. No one else pays for this. Yeah. It's not making me bankrupt, but I mean, I'm not breaking even doing Metal Rules, and I never have, and that's not why I do it. Like you said, it's a passion project. It's not
for the money. It's passion.
No. If it cost me, $1,000 a month, I would have to really reevaluate my life. But I mean, it's not that. So,
right. But if it's a hobby, it's like a hobby. Someone like collects trinkets, or like drinks a particular beverage, or like something that you spend money on. People that go to the casino that that do stuff like that. For you, this is your kind of fun way of spending your free money every month. That you're doing something that's really unique and incredible, and it's something that a lot of the rest of the world can kind of piggyback on and enjoy the fruits of your labor. And that's a really fantastic contribution to the metal world. So from the bottom of my heart, we thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully
thank you very much, Evil G. Thank you for your time too, and everything you've done with Metal Rules, and for talking to us today.
Yeah, we're honored that you came on. This is incredible. First we get Robert Lowe, now we get Evil G. Like, this is just ridiculous.
I don't really do very many interviews. I've probably done a handful, but
well, that makes it all the more special.
I'm usually on the other end of the spectrum. If I'm conducting an interview, not being asked questions. So it's kind of cool to be on the other side too.
Well, man, if you ever want to come back on again, discuss anything we're discussing, you're welcome. Anytime we do this, you're welcome to come on, and we could talk, whatever our topics are of the day. We usually pick a topic, the one week, no matter what it is. Like, we'll do genre talks, like we did power metal. We talked about thrash metal. We do whole shows on genre or what's going on, or just
or some of the big stuff, like Ozzy versus Dio, or Maiden versus Priest, stuff like that.
Maybe we should do it. Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do a Maiden versus Priest episode.
That would be awesome, because I love both bands. I mean, I definitely know Maiden way better than I know Priest, but like all my times I've exposed myself to Priest, I'm like, these guys are great too.
You got to change that.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with New Wave British, man. It's all of it's fantastic. There's just so much good shit out there.
It's true. Yeah, I did introduce them to the New Wave of British heavy metal not too long ago. Some obscure bands like Angel Witch and Diamond Head. I gave them some of that stuff. Yeah. So it's good. Awesome. I've been educating my younger cousin a lot through the last year, but
yeah.
I mean, music, as far as musicians go, this kid could play, circles around me. But I'm older, so I have this whole vast knowledge of metal to give to them. And when we used to get together, holidays, family get-togethers, I'd always be like, there's a new Iron Man album out. He'd be like, third team. Be like, what? Iron Maiden? I'm like, yeah, there's a new Iron Man album out. I kind of just, I've been pushing him and prodding him that way since he was a kid. So
yeah,
cool.
He's always been a big Maiden hookup for me. Yeah, yeah. And the best part is that black box over in the corner there. It's an accordion, and nothing sounds better than Iron Maiden on an accordion.
That's true. That's true. I wish we had that on video. We did. We sang Aces High Christmas Eve the one year. So thank you very much, Evil G, for coming on to our show. And if you like what you're seeing here, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel and join Rock Talk with the DocRocker Facebook group on Facebook. There's a lot of great discussion there about all things metal. Till next time, we'll see you. Thank you very much again for coming on, Evil G.
Also, subscribe to Metal Rules. Metal Rules is on like every platform ever. There's a Twitter, there's an Instagram, there's a YouTube channel, there is a Facebook page for Metal Rules. So check out the website for starters. And if you're not familiar with this guy, check out his other social media content as well. Subscribe to us and also subscribe to him. The more subscriptions we get for everybody, the better. So subscribe.